more on the guilty verdict and what this could mean for Donald Trump's bid to become U.S. president once again. We're now joined by Paul Pelletier. He is an attorney, former federal prosecutor, and law professor at the George Washington University of Law School. Paul, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us. I want to kind of get right to it. Firstly, were you surprised by this?
Well, thanks for having me on, Sean. And to tell you the truth, no, I wasn't surprised by this. Having participated in numerous federal trials as a prosecutor, when I watched the case unfold and watched how the prosecutors meticulously went through the evidence, watched how the juries paid very close attention, and then saw sort of the defense flame out in the end by calling Costello, who is a former attorney of President Trump, really. And then when I saw what questions the jury asked, and that is to read back the testimony, mostly of David Pecker and some of Michael Cohen, it was very clear that they were focusing on the issue that really mattered in this case, and that is whether these records were rigged in order to help President Trump, former President Trump, in his election bid in 2016. It was pretty clear where the jury was going to me.
Yeah, and I mean, that cuts to the heart of the issue, because what he was charged with was a statute that says when you're covering up a financial entity to either enhance your chances or knock somebody else's down. And the fact that he has said time and again that this has been weaponized, so much in fact that he was, I guess, sanctioned 10 times and had to pay $10,000 in fines. How do you counter when people say, look, this was simply weaponized? This comes from the Biden administration.
Well, I mean, you counter it like you, well, first of all, it was countered in the courtroom with the truth and facts. And that's the only way you can counter it, right? But by confronting the situation with facts and the truth. We watched the trial unfold. It was a very fair trial. And look, I've had over 100 jury trials. This is the way fair jury trials happen. The prosecutor presents their evidence, the defense cross-examines the witnesses, and then the defense can present a case. Closing arguments happen, and then we leave it to a jury to determine the fate under our law. In this case, it happened all according to the book, and it couldn't have been at least perceptibly fairer to Mr. Trump. And like anyone else in the country should be treated that way. Nobody should be treated different in the courtroom.
Okay, perceptively fair. I want to build on that because Trump has made it clear he is going to appeal this. What does he appeal on? What can he really build on? Because it seemed like the judge went out of his way time and time again to even question the defense. Why didn't you object more? Why didn't you do this? Does Trump have anything to appeal on?
Well, first of all, savvy lawyers can find a lot to appeal on. And in this case, some of the counts, my idea of what they could appeal on is some of the counts involved records which were made after the election. So I think that, but that still doesn't make them free and clear, but some of the counts were for business records that we created after the election. I would think you could have some argument there. But it looks fairly bulletproof, but you never know what's going to happen on the Court of Appeals, right?
But you also raised the question, if this happened after the race, why didn't the defense bring this up the first time? We've had this time and time again with Trump's counsel.
That's a great question. There's a theory in appeals whether or not you objected, right? And if you didn't object, the court will look at it through the eyes of whether the error was harmless or not. So they could find that because the evidence was so overwhelming, because you didn't object, it was a harmless error, so that they would look at it through a harmless error standard. But yes, you know, the problem with Mr. Trump, he looked like he was directing the lawyers rather than the lawyers were directing him. And that's always a problem if you've ever had a client like that.
And we've heard that before. And secondly, Trump does not do a very good job of masking his notorious volcanic temper. And apparently you saw a bit of that as the verdict came down. And we heard a bit from him as he walked out, saying it was a bogus trial, saying that this had been rigged, which we'd heard time and time again. Where does he go for this, other than, I'm sure, his website tonight around midnight in all caps, launching his tweets or on social media out later tonight? But what do you think we're going to hear from Trump in the coming days? What does this do to his chances of becoming president?
Well, first of all, it can't help his chances, right? But it's a different world that we live in today. In 2016, I would say this would, from 2016 and before, I would say that this would be an automatic exclusion from being the nominee of the Republican Party. It's different now, and now we have a populist, some would say fascist Republican Party that has a certain base. I gotta think though it's gonna affect the middle of the road voters, the swing voters, the independent voters.
Also, Trump did a good job of luring some GOP heavyweights out to basically try to make his case because he had the gag order. What happens to those individuals? I mean, it certainly can't help their cause because, you know, time and again, the argument has been that Trump surrounds himself with sycophants and people coming out and basically trying to argue his case, and then an overwhelming verdict like this comes out.
Look, you've seen a lot of those people came from what we call red states, right? So their jobs are not in jeopardy. I think where the fallout of this is going to be is after the election. If Trump loses, I believe that the Republican Party is going to be in for a reckoning. I think that they could implode, and there's going to be all kinds of civil war within the Republican Party. So I don't think there's going to be a reckoning until after the election. And if Trump loses, I think it could be a very volatile situation within the Republican Party.
Okay, Paul Pelletier, we can't thank you enough for your insight. Thanks for taking time.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Okay.